Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Art of Selling podcast. On the show, we basically talk about the best kept secrets that can help you sell more stuff to more people so you can add value and benefit your customers, your business, your staff, and essentially your family. Now, we wish that all this information was available and easily accessible when we started years ago, and it wasn't. So over the years, we spent close to about R1 million hiring and working with some of the best sales gurus, marketing specialists, and business operators in this space. And now we're sharing a lot of that information for free because of the fact that we don't want you to struggle the way we did. Now, you're wondering what's the catch? The catch is just approach this with your ego at the door, open your mind, and just implement some of these perspectives when it comes to your business. My name is Jandre. I'm the host, and these are my co-hosts. I've got Gilbert Kompokwe.
Hey, how y'all doing? Good to be back.
And I've got Vickers van Wyk.
Hey, nice to be back.
Awesome. So basically, a quick summary, if this is your first time here, this podcast, we basically focus on mostly the psychology when it comes to improving your marketing and sales strategies. So we've identified a few times now in previous episodes, and if you haven't watched them yet, we highly encourage you to start with episode 1 and work your way up, because there's a ton of value, that you might be missing out on. But the long and the short of it is that there are 2 pillars to a successful marketing strategy, and the 2 pillars are technology and psychology. Now, most brands essentially make the mistake of purely focusing on the technological side of a marketing strategy, and the true element of success really lies in the psychological element of everything. So in today's episode, we're going to be talking about the buying journey your customers go through when it comes to deciding whether they're going to be supporting you, your business, and the products or services that you have, or potentially a competitor. And we're going to unpack how this happens in the back of their minds. And we're going to go through the whole journey and provide you with some tactics and strategies that you can leverage in order to improve, this experience for your customers and increase your odds of selling the product or service to them as opposed to your competitors. So, Gil, Vix, really excited about this.
Yeah, no, likewise. I think it's going to be a great topic for everyone out there to really get inside the consumer's mind when it comes to essentially making a decision. And we're obviously going to look at it from the top level down, but it's important to understand how a consumer even starts the journey. Where do they start on that journey? And we refer to things like top of the funnel, the middle of the funnel, and bottom of the funnel. Maybe not everybody would know that, but it's usually just these marketing terms that we use. But ultimately, it's basically going from how do you take your customer from a stage where they're possibly unaware, first and foremost, of your brand or product, to the stage where they're informed enough, confident enough to ultimately purchase and buy from you, and then also what happens next afterwards.
Yeah, the better we can reverse engineer this process for our businesses, the more successful and the more stuff we'll sell at the end of the day.
100%. So when it comes to the buying journey, it's important to understand that there are a couple of phases in this journey, stages, if you will, that we need to be aware of. Now, I'm going to quickly unpack these stages for you listening, and then we can talk about what they all mean and what we can potentially do in these stages as marketing specialists or as business owners to increase our odds of success when it comes to selling our products or services. So basically, if you have to imagine how this journey looks like, and I think many of marketers have referred, to this as a funnel, and it's just the easiest analogy to truly understand. If you had to look at a funnel and imagine one in your mind right now, you will understand that the funnel is quite wide and large at the top and quite small, well, a lot smaller at the bottom. And in essence, that represents the fact that if you are targeting a large audience if you're going after a specific target market, not everybody that you are, showing your message to is essentially ready to take action and buy your product or service. So people first in this journey need to become what we call aware of your product or service. And that's really the first stage, is really becoming aware that this is a brand that I am willing to spend time and energy on to learn more about their product or service. And if you can't make someone aware about your brand or product, you're not going to sell anything. You can have the best product in the world, but if you don't have awareness or attention on your product or service, nothing's going to happen.
Yeah. And essentially it's a upside down triangle. That's
Yeah.
how you can look at it. And for the most part, I mean, in any given market, majority of the people, as the triangle represents itself, is they're sitting at the top there, where they're not in a state of buying at this moment in time. That's a very small percentage of it. So it means that when you are starting out with your marketing, you want to consider positioning your brand, your product, your service in a way that is ultimately making them aware of what potential it is that you do, why they should care, why they should spend 2 seconds, 3 seconds learning a little bit about your product or brand. And that's the type of messaging and marketing that you need to be focusing on in the beginning stages of that funnel.
Yeah, like we said, it's just mainly getting people to understand that your brand is actually real and exists. This is something worth considering.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's different stages. Like I think you get all products and services out there solve some sort of problem for your consumers, and it's also a question of, are people problem aware or are they solution aware? And it's also understanding your consumer in that way, and on which side to focus on in your marketing. But most marketing campaigns also focus on both making people aware of the problem and then also touching on what the solution may be, and hence the product exists at the end of the day.
Yeah, it boils down to understanding that people either want to buy something or they need to buy something. And some people need to do both. So in essence, you need to ask yourself, if you have a product or service in the market, is it a want or is it a need or is it both? If it's both, then you're probably going to have a bigger chance of succeeding. If you're selling, luxury items, you have to essentially, which is not needed, but people might want, it's a good example of something that people want and don't necessarily need, you're going to have to get the emotional appeal to get people to go, okay, that is a brand worth buying into. So you have to make them aware that this is a brand, and you're going to have to send out certain signals and messages to get them to understand that this is something that can potentially improve their status. So they might, essentially start making a decision whether it's something that they want to consider or not. But then you have groceries and food, which is something that people need. So it's really understanding that, you can position, if Mr. Delivery is a classic example of a want and a need, because you need to eat, but you also want fast food. You don't need it, but you want it, but you need to eat. So it's understanding, like, you need to ask yourself first, is my product a want? Is it a need? Is it both? And that's when you can start to tailor your messaging for people in the top of the funnel and start making them aware of these potential problems that you're really solving.
And I think also a good place to start is trying to understand where your consumer would go first and foremost to find that solution and what it is that they would actually be searching for. So you can imagine maybe going onto Google, for example, and typing out minor backaches from time to time. Somebody's searching for a solution because they're feeling maybe discomfort here and there and they're not sure what it is. In that stage, they're trying to gather information. And you need to be able to speak to that information and respond to it in a manner that they understand. So if they had to visit the website because they feel like there's something wrong with them, they're young and vibrant, but they keep getting some backaches here and there, and they don't think it's normal. And possibly they read an article about potentially what could be the issues around, you having and experiencing backache. And it's going to be more informational than it is just purely, hey, buy this product now, it'll solve all your issues. So they're still in the discovery phase, and that's the type of information that you might present to them to help them better understand the issue at hand.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about an optometrist. So if you had to target people who are 30 and over, and you had to say, like, from the age of 30, your eyesight starts declining. Most people don't even know it. So you can get specific glasses in order to prevent, this aging or, just like weakness effect on the eyes. When I'm reading that going, well, I don't have a problem with my eyes, but now I'm becoming aware of the problem. And the problem is that I'm most likely running the risk of, losing a percentage of my eyesight every year because of the fact that I'm maybe sitting in front of a computer all the time, or whatever it is. So the educational part of it is really important, of making people aware of the problem. And if people are already aware of the problem, then your solution becomes more attractive. But usually in those markets, there are a lot more competition as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just to speak to this specifically is that in a market where you have a massive pain point, there's a high likelihood that there are already competitors solving that pain point. So even though it might be easier to sell the product to those people, it's going to be more competitive because there's already people selling that product. Or essentially, you're in a market where someone is not aware of that, necessarily pain point yet. You might have the advantage, but the problem now is that you have to make them understand the pain point or the problem first, so that you can sell them the solution.
Yeah, like a more like if we want to add on top of that to make it a little bit more practical, that's going to come down to the two different marketing channels as well. Like you get direct response marketing, and then you get the search based marketing, which the search based marketing things refer to Google Ads, and there people physically go and look for a certain thing that they're experiencing or a problem that they're experiencing, and they pick it up that way. And when you go to the more direct response marketing side of things, that's where Facebook plays a bigger role. That is where we can really create the demand for our product. And I think if we have to kind of like take it to a more practical way of how do you execute on this, it's understanding where your buyer is in the journey and what platform is going to be best for you to use then to reach that particular buyer.
Yeah, so the first real stage is just the awareness stage. And I think the biggest takeaway there is that you need to make someone aware. But in order to make them aware, and we've spoken about this in the very first episode, is that we have to grab their attention. So you can't make someone aware of something if you don't have their attention. So really, the awareness stage, if we have to conclude what's most important in this stage, is that realizing you have to grab the market that you're going after. You have to grab their attention. Maybe we can just talk about some best attention grabbing strategies, Gil. I know in the first episode you had some insights to share about this, about calling out the audience and whatnot. Maybe we can elaborate on that.
Yeah. So understanding who your audience is super crucial, because how else are you going to be able to talk to them? So one of the examples I just gave was if it's potentially you targeting, let's say, graphic designers. In your headline, you would actually say graphic designers get the latest software that's revolutionizing the whole industry, for example. And that's just one way, the messaging in itself, because it talks about graphic design. Those are the keywords that you're using. Those specifically are calling out towards the target audience that you really want to capture. And of course, depending on what it is that you have on offer, it's important just to ensure that your main messaging is somehow calling them out. You're trying to get people to raise their hand, but if it's a blanket message like here's a revolutionary design platform, it's like, who are you talking to? So I think it's important to be able to somehow call them out. You could even call them out in the video or the creative, as long as it's possibly done, let's say, in the first 5 seconds. But it's important to understand who your target market is and make sure that you call them out somehow, whether it's in the copy or the actual video or creative that you have. Something needs to get their attention to know that, oh, this is for me that they're speaking to.
100%.
Yeah, like a good example of that is we work with a lot of beauty businesses as well, and we always address our main audience is women, right? And we always address something. We always say the beginning of that is always like, "Hey, ladies," or something in those lines, and then we usually address the main problem or the main solution that we have for ladies, and then we directly get to the point as to what is the deal about and how they can take action on this deal.
Yeah, so it's really just understanding that you have to grab your audience's attention. You have to make them aware of what you're trying to say first before anything else can really happen and before they can continue this journey with your business. And that takes us to the second stage, which is really the consideration stage. So we have now made someone aware that our brand and our product exists, and they might have seen a logo, they might have seen a message, or they saw the ad that says, "Hey, graphic designers." And the next stage is really now understanding that the potential customer on the other end of this ad is now considering whether this is something that they want to spend time looking into, or is it really worth buying? They're going to start doing their research, and they're basically just considering whether this is something worth spending their time, money, and energy on, essentially.
We've been talking about the attention side of it and making sure that, at the end of the day, if you can't get their attention, then the marketing that you're doing is going to fall to the wayside. But in the consideration stage, I think what's also, I want to mention something that is important, and that is if you can understand your customer's pain point more than they do, they're going to be all ears. And when you are able to do that, that consideration stage, regardless of all the competition that's out there and also trying to sell that product and solve that problem, if you are the one that the customer truly feels like you understand the pain point more than themselves, they will be all ears to you and they'll be eating out of your hand, lack of a better expression. And that's your job. Your job is to make sure that in that consideration stage, that is how you are able to make the customer feel, because the information you give them should be able to truly make them feel comfortable that you're the solution that they're probably looking for.
Yeah, I suppose what you're also getting at is that people need to resonate with your message, and they need to resonate with what you're trying to say, because you can get the ladies' attention. So if you're saying, hey, ladies, and you grab their attention, like Vikas was saying, is that you now need to resonate with them in some way, shape, or form to get them to go, okay, this is something worth paying attention to. And this goes back to the analogy that I used in the first episode about really unpacking the difference between interrupted attention and intentional attention. So at the awareness stage of the journey, we're really trying to grab their attention by interrupting them in some way, shape, or form. So if you're driving on the highway and there's a billboard, technically, your thoughts are bouncing around in your head and you're looking at the billboard. Some people pay attention to it consciously, or consciously it might grab your attention, it might not, but technically it's interrupting you from thoughts that's already happening in your mind. And if you're running a Facebook ad, it's the same thing. You're scrolling through your feed, looking at what family's been up to, looking at some messages, and then you see an ad that's interrupting you from the existing thoughts that are in your head based on the information that you've seen prior. So the first part is really interrupting someone in their thought patterns and getting their attention. The second stage is converting that interrupted attention into intentional intention, where someone can go, hold on, this is interesting. Let me actually give this my full attention and start to consider what to do with this information. And that's basically what I'm hearing you say is like, that's really the crucial part, is now we need to resonate with them. We need to get them to understand that you, as a business owner, have this exact product they need to cure their specific pain point, whatever that may be.
And that's where I think in terms of content, that's where research papers come in, a white paper, an ebook, to help them better understand their problem and the solutions that exist, because that's the consideration stage, that's the research stage, that's the research phase that the customer is going through, and you need to be able to produce that information that they're seeking at that stage. And those, like I said, typically come in the form of an ebook or a research paper and that sort of thing.
Yeah, like in the beginning stages of me learning marketing and everything, like I've really undervalued the value of actually knowing your customer deeply and knowing their pain points. And I think the longer I've been doing marketing, the more evident it became to me that it's so important. Like it's the cornerstone of everything we do when it comes to marketing and sales. Because without that, we can't resonate with our customers, and without resonating, we can't continue on this buyer's journey.
Yeah. So I was looking at it going, the first part of the stage is the awareness stage, and the biggest takeaway there is that you have to grab their attention and trying to get them to pay attention to what you're trying to say. The second stage is really the consideration stage. This is where they're going to start doing research on your product or service. And essentially in this stage, it's important for you to articulate what your product's all about, your service is all about, maybe giving them some additional information, like you're saying, ebooks perhaps, or blog articles that they can read on your site to better understand, all the different nuances of the specific pain point that they might have. It could be even looking at your social media community and then be engaging there with other so there's a couple of weight loss brands that I've seen who do this really well, where they would have like a weight loss group. So it's the brand that obviously is selling the nutritional solution to these ladies, losing weight and getting into shape. But then there's a support group where people can go and learn more, not just about the product, but also just additional information on how to live a healthy lifestyle. And that's such a beautiful tactic for the consideration phase, because essentially, it's understanding that these people are looking to lose weight. You've grabbed their attention with your community. Now they're in that community, they're talking to other people about, how to lose weight, and they're actually taking some of the advice and perspectives and ideas. And now they're starting to actually potentially considering your product as well. And that becomes the third stage, which is basically the decision stage. This is where someone now needs to decide whether they're going to take the next step in buying the product or service or not.
Some nice example as well is challenges in that consideration stage, because at least with the challenge you offer them like a 7-day free trial, and then ultimately if they're happy with it, they've experienced some sort of, and they've gotten hopefully some sort of value out of it in that free trial, you're essentially helping them make that decision by giving them the value in exchange for them joining that challenge. And that's when it obviously boils down to now that final stage, where if they were happy and convinced enough and this is the product that they're really looking for, then essentially they'll buy. But challenge is also a nice way to actually get people in and help them make that decision.
Yeah. In the consideration stage, it's also a great opportunity to build some trust and credibility for your brand and products. Because an example of a strategy is we work with a wealth company that helps people acquire properties, and they do pretty much like a masterclass up front, just to give people an idea of how they do it and what's important, and they really give some good advice on investing. And based on that, a lot of people are interested to actually take him up on his offer and sign on to his service. So yeah, it's a great way to build credibility as well.
Yeah, so people look at other people in the community, perhaps, from a trust and credibility perspective, there's many ways to do that. I think when you're looking at someone, perhaps on the other side of a Zoom call or a webinar, there's instant trust that this person is real. You're listening to their information, that they're sharing in that specific webinar. We've tried webinars and it works like, really like a bomb for us as well. And understanding the reason why it works is because someone is now aware that you are offering some form of solution, but they're not sure if you're the right company or brand to, spend their time and money or energy on. And then on a webinar, for example, that's what you basically highlighted, is where you can start to get better and deeper insight to the actual problem and how it can be solved and how the specific company is solving that problem. And then by analyzing that solution, their specific solution to the problem, you can then decide whether that makes sense to you or not. But because other people are taking action, you start to trust the process and you go, well, let me just, spend my money with these individuals. And I think that's where the decision stage comes in. And that's just really the most crucial stage, because you can grab someone's attention, you can give them all this information, you can build all the trust and credibility, but if you can't get them to commit, and I think this is where most people drop off, most customers drop off during the actual decision stage, and a lot of brands don't necessarily know how to position the offer or the message in a specific way to get someone to actually pick their product over a competitor's. So, for example, we own a marketing agency, right? So we have a lot of people who might want to consider our marketing services to other companies because it's a very competitive or saturated market. Now, we have certain tactics in order to make sure that we look unique or we look different or we appeal to a different, maybe perspective or need or pain point. But there's just one tactic or a couple of tactics essentially on how to get someone to rather decide to go with you than someone else. Because in this stage, they really need to make a decision. They just need to pick who they're going to go with. And by leveraging certain tactics and strategies, you can essentially ensure that there's a high probability that they're going to be picking you.
Yeah. And that's where it's so important to understand your unique selling points, right? This is something that we always hammer on with regards to the different businesses that we worked on. We're always emphasizing what are unique selling points. What are unique selling points? Because it's so easy to become a commoditized brand or product. When what I mean by that, it's if your brand is or products are easily compared with any other products and brands out there, it becomes a fight either based off of probably price, because at the end of the day, I can just compare apples with apples, right? It's just that, that apple over there down the road is much cheaper than your apple. Maybe your apple is much higher just purely because you're in a different location. But it becomes then very difficult to convince them to buy from you, because at the end of the day, they can only just compare apples with apples because that's how you look to them. And so it's important to understand what your unique selling points are. So you might want to be packaging yourself in a way that, one of the strategies is packaging yourself in a way that you can't be compared apples with apples, right? So you can actually say, listen, I understand that you believe that my service or my products are very similar to the one down the road, but you've got to understand what I have different is A, B, and C. You can't actually compare us. And that's what the reality is. It's trying to find out what your unique selling points are. What is it that's the A, B, and C that that the business down the road doesn't actually have, or maybe offer just added value. Maybe there's added value that you provide because you have, I don't know, business insights that the down the road doesn't have, or you have certain intellectual property, or you have certain access to information that is not readily available into the market, and it actually helps the customers to benefit from you rather than just going down the road. So it's important to understand what is it that is your unique selling point that won't just allow you to easily differentiate between brand A and brand B.
Yeah, Gil, I think that's also a big part of why we've productized our service, actually, because we've bundled a bunch of services up that makes it more probable and more likely for people to achieve the end result than competing with somebody that just does service X. So we have the whole bundle of services instead of somebody having one or two services. So we don't directly compete with them, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, there's things like unique intellectual property. There's an undeniable stack of proof on the back of that what we do works. There are other elements that obviously come into play that can allow the business on any other side to more conveniently and easily make a decision to pick, company X over company Y. I think when it comes to the decision phase, the most important elements, I think, for most people, being cognizant of the economy that we're in as well, is price. Essentially, it's always a big thing. Like, people always bring up price, no matter what product or service you sell. It's always a sensitive topic. So you need to ask yourself, how are you going to position yourself in terms of price in order to compete with other people? And if you can't compete on price, what can you do differently that can get people to perceive that the value that you're offering is worth the price? And we spoke about this before, as essentially as well, is like the value always needs to essentially exceed the price that you're paying. So the question then becomes, in this decision phase, how can you position your value of the product or service that you're selling so that it can essentially justify the price? And other element is trust and credibility. Can I really trust this company? I'm going to make a decision, so I'm going to pick the one that I trust is going to get me the result that I want the most. So how can you essentially continue building trust and credibility throughout the whole buying journey, so that when the decision actually needs to be made, someone already has this emotional or cognitive bias of this company of yours? So we spoke about, emotional and cognitive biases in the previous episode. And if you haven't listened to watch that, I highly recommend that you go back and check that out. But it really understands, like, if you've done everything correctly, then their own cognitive and emotional bias would go, well, I'm just going to pick this company because this is what makes sense right now. So the decision stage becomes a lot easier for that consumer on the other end, and it's a higher probability that you're actually going to get the deal, or them buying from you, whether it's a product or a service.
Yeah, a big part of that is also getting the consumer to emotionally buy into the end result of what your product or service is going to do for them. That, like, I've just noticed through my own selling and marketing that like the times that I did feel like I didn't do well in, whether that's a sales call, whether that's a marketing campaign, was when I didn't have a clear path for the customer to get to the end result, and they didn't clearly understand how they are going to get to the end result. And that is all about getting them emotionally invested in what this product or service will get for them at the end of the day.
What's in it for me?
Yeah.
I always talk about that, right? Like, every time we're talking about marketing, and you must always think about it, the end result for the customer. Your marketing messages must constantly highlight and reiterate what's in it for the customer. They don't, honestly speaking, don't care about your business. They care about themselves. It's an egotistical thing. It's a natural state of being. But as long as you can answer what's in it for them and how they will get there, that path, that journey, there's a good chance that they would likely choose you over another brand as well.
Yeah, man, 100%. And I think reflecting on the previous episode that we did about cognitive and emotional biases, and speaking about the decision-making stage, there are little tips and tactics that you can actually leverage in order to increase, the odds of getting the sale. And, the two that actually comes to mind is, urgency and scarcity, which is an emotional bias, right? Just like, if someone has to make a decision, you can increase the odds of them making that decision in your favor by adding a sense of urgency and scarcity to to the deal. And this is very applicable to e-commerce businesses. But we've spoken about that in the previous episode as well. And we've spoken about how it needs to be in conjunction with authenticity. Otherwise, it's going to fall through the mat and people are going to see straight through the BS meter. The other thing and you mentioned this in the previous episode as well, from a purchasing standpoint, was the simple and clean process. It needs to be easy and convenient. And that boils down to the instant gratification bias, where people want things instantly because we don't have the patience. So if you have something like that in place, then again, you can make the decision a lot easier as a customer in supporting your business as opposed to a competitor.
Yeah, I almost see it like there's a bunch of boxes. So let's say there's 10 boxes that you need to tick, and then that equals sales, right? So if you can check all of those boxes at the end of the day, you would naturally have to make a sale because that's logically how it works. And I think that's just how I see sales as pretty much like just a way of, cool, these are all the things that a customer needs to know to essentially make a buying decision. And if I check all of these boxes, naturally you are going to get the sale.
100%. But it doesn't just stop there, right? So we've spoken about the awareness stage. We've spoken about the consideration stage. We've spoken about the actual decision stage where they're making the decision to buy the product. But then they buy the product, and that's where a lot of people stop with their marketing. And they think, well, everything is now, we've achieved the goal. Let's go and attract the next client for our e-commerce business, or go and find the next customer, or whatever it is. And it doesn't really stop there. It continues. The whole journey continues. And the next stage essentially is the post-purchase evaluation stage, where we need to understand that the person who's now supported your business, who's now bought a product or service from you, you are running the risk of them experiencing something that we call buyer's remorse. So that is something that a lot of people end up experiencing when they buy a product or service that they got manipulated into buying. And we spoke about the difference between persuasion and manipulation in our very first episode. And essentially your product value needs to match, obviously, how you're marketing your business as well. And considering the post-purchase evaluation stage, there's things that you can do to make sure that the customer remains happy with your service. And there's also things that you can do to ensure that they get the most amount of value out of your service so that they can become a repeat customer, essentially, as well.
And then, so breaking that up into two parts, I think it's important, especially for service businesses. Service-based businesses, you've just signed up for a monthly payment to go of every single month, and you're obviously expecting a service. But yes, that buyer's remorse kicks in after, there's no real time to it, but maybe even a week later, your first payment went off and you're starting to wonder, is this a good idea? And we do certain things in the agency, in the business itself, to ensure that that high that they initially had when they first signed on and that first payment went off remains there. We always work to do our best to, we're ultimately in a position where it's a lot based on results, performance. And so we always, we've recently discovered on ways to get quick wins for certain clients, so that we can ensure that high that remains, and it's not going to, that buyer's remorse at least kind of dwells down a little bit, so that we can actually get them to keep being invested by helping with certain quick wins, certain things we can do for the client to really see results and reduce the time to get those results from the time they've paid to the time where we actually start executing. Our goal is to always try and reduce the amount of days that we can get something of a result for them, even if it's just a small little win, whether it's email or ads, doesn't matter. But we try our best to ensure that the buyer's remorse doesn't kick in and take over their thinking from the get-go.
Yeah, I think it's very applicable to an e-commerce business too, because if you've got a long delay in terms of your shipping process, and you have to wait for your product for, let's say 7 to 14 days, buyer's remorse is essentially going to kick in at some point and go, did I make the right decision? I probably shouldn't have bought this. But if you can get that product delivered instantly within 24 to 48 hours, that high remains there. And hopefully, obviously, the product can really add the benefit that you said it will, which means that person will become a loyal customer. And I think if we have to paint the picture and put this all the puzzle pieces together. It's really understanding that there's only two ways to build and grow a successful business. You have to attract new customers every single month, and you have to bring them back every single month as well, the best you can. So for an e-commerce business, the more customers you can bring back every single month and the more new customers you can find, the quicker you can grow this business of yours. And I think a lot of people, when it comes to the e-commerce space, like they grab attention, they get the consideration stage right, they get them to make a decision, but then they never really bring them back with the product because maybe the product didn't live up to their expectations, the shipping time was too long, or it's a situation where the buyer's remorse just kicked in and they were like, nah, you know what, I'm not going to support this company again. But if you can overcome all these hurdles, there's a good chance that customer is going to come back, and that's how you tick the box of a repeat customer, and then you also have already ticked the box of finding a new customer, and this is how the formula technically compounds in order for you to build and grow your business.
Yeah, buyer's remorse is also going to depend on the size of the purchase, obviously. The bigger the purchase, the higher the chance, or the more amplified the buyer's remorse is going to be. And it's about setting or putting systems in place in the back end of this as soon as a customer is bought to kind of like, I call it like time to gratification, like the faster the time from them taking that action to the gratification we can provide them in the form of a result or whatever the product promises, the less that's going to be at the end of the day. And that's just how I look at it.
100%. I think just reflecting on this before we move on to the next stage is really just understanding we need to do everything in our power to make sure that customer remains happy once they've spent the money with your business, whether it's an e-commerce business or a service business or a local business, whatever it is. And there are many different things that you can do in order to make sure that it happens, because the goal is to ensure that they come back. And this is the last part of the stage or the journey, which is the last stage. And that's essentially for them to become a repeat customer. Essentially, again, like we've said, like people have to come back every single month. So in essence, you were referring to it earlier as like speed to value is really crucial, because that's going to keep their endorphins high. It's going to keep them excited about the brand and the product and the service. And sports nutrition brands do this specifically well. So they would sell a product that can help you build muscle or can help you lose body fat. But what they would do is alongside that, they also give you a nutrition plan and a meal plan. So there's additional value that can help you get the most amount of value out of the product. So it's, if you're selling a product or a service, is there anything additional that you can give the customer that can allow them to get the most amount of value out of your product or service? And once you get these things right, the odds of them becoming a repeat customer, essentially will be much higher, will make it a lot easier for you to grow your business. So there are things like loyalty programs and reward programs essentially that come into play. A lot of brands have this already in place to ensure that people come back.
And I think it's, I don't know, from experience, not every business takes it as seriously when it comes to the back end and obviously ensuring that there is repeat purchases. I think sometimes some businesses get too fixated on acquiring the customer, but less so on the repurchase rate and bringing that customer back to buy again and again. And maybe it's just it's just one of those things where we always, as you said, growing the business requires that you keep getting new customers, and you keep getting new customers coming in. And what some maybe businesses overlook or don't really pay close attention to is that the real profit comes from the repurchase rate. That's actually where you make profit, because the first time around when you're acquiring the customer, there's a lot of costs that go into it. And in most cases, you don't make profit off of that first sale. You actually possibly make a loss. So the only way for you to really recoup and recover is to ensure that that customer comes back again and again and again. And the only time you're really making profit is maybe on the second sale, the third sale, the fourth sale, depending again on what you're selling. It's so important that, and I mean, these are the conversations that now you start having about lifetime value of a customer, and these are the things that one should be investing in as well, is understanding what is the lifetime value of my customer. How much profit down the line can I truly make if I were to ensure that they were coming back to me every single month to buy over and over and over again? Because that customer acquisition that you initially had for that customer will pay itself 10 times over if indeed you are focusing on how can I keep bringing customers back, loyalty points, referrals. If they refer, they get a discount, whatever the case may be. Giving us a review, they get a discount, those type of things. It's important to have your back end side as well put in place to ensure that this customer can be a lifelong customer, because those are the ones that keep businesses afloat, and not purely just the new ones that you get who might have a maybe even drop off after the first purchase or whatever.
Yeah, it's understanding that those two things, acquiring customers and maintaining customers or growing your lifetime value for your business, is two different organisms, and they should be seen and handled as two different things. Because acquiring new customers is how you grow your business, but retaining customers and increasing your lifetime value is how you sustain the growth, right? So it's understanding that those two things should be looked at individually.
100%. And I think there are many ways that you can go about ensuring that people come back. I mean, you think about excellent customer service, you think about, we've spoken about loyalty programs, but there's also cross-selling and upselling. Like if someone has bought a product from you, and Apple again is amazing at doing this. If you bought an iPhone recently, what else did you buy with it? Screen protector and a cover.
Yeah.
Whether you buy any phone, like this is essentially going like, oh, okay, cool. I'm only going into the store essentially once and I'm spending my money, but in that moment you're spending your money on 2 or 3 different things, because you're getting cross-sold and upsold. Or what happens is down the line, if you're buying from a clothing store example, an e-commerce business, you would be buying maybe a product, let's say a pair of jeans for example, and a month later you're like, I really enjoy that pair of jeans, maybe just let me get another pair of jeans. I've had that happen to me recently actually. Or it's a color shirt and you go, well, let me actually get the shirt that matches the tracksuit, sweatpants that I bought, whatever it is. It's really understanding there are mechanisms that you can implement into your business to ensure that people actually come back. And obviously we'll touch more on this in future episodes, but just concluding in terms of the actual buying journey of a customer, we need to understand that it all starts with the awareness stage. People need to become aware of your brand and your necessary solution in the market, whether it's a product or a service. The next step is really then the consideration stage, where we then need to get the potential customer to better understand how our solution is potentially different and how our solution can benefit their lives. And then the next step is the decision stage, where we need to give them as much, essentially a bit of a push in terms of urgency and scarcity, or trust and credibility, or really good price, or whatever it is, to get them to better understand that this is actually the company that I want to, support in terms of the product or service. And then after that, it's understanding that we now need to continue working on keeping this customer happy, post their purchase, so they can get the most value from the company and the product or the business, the product or service that they've bought. And then after that, it's bringing them back. So the last stage is just ensuring that we bring them back on a monthly basis. And that's really the whole journey in itself. So yeah, I think I would love to, Gil, you obviously that works more with e-commerce businesses. Maybe you can give us a theoretical example of the whole journey from grabbing attention at the top, what we would call the awareness stage or top of the funnel, walking them through the consideration stage, the decision stage, and then obviously becoming a loyal customer, repeat customer. And we can do the same with Vickers, maybe from a lead generation or a local business perspective as well.
Yeah, so I think from my side, what you might be looking at is from the awareness stage, top of the funnel, you would have a product that is simply educating people on what it does, what it helps people achieve. So maybe it helps them achieve improved mental focus, and it's a supplement, and that is something that could be in the form of a video, possibly somebody even taking the product and improving their concentration levels, showing how much more efficient they are when they're working or studying, whatever the case may be. And that would be in the awareness stage. So you're simply talking about what the product is and what it helps with.
And it's primarily to new people.
New people, exactly. And then, of course, somebody maybe clicks on that ad or that content, goes through to your site, reads a little bit more on the product pages about this product, and they're at least now aware of the brand. They know that there's this product out there that exists that can help me improve focus, concentration, study better, work better. And at that stage, you obviously haven't taken any action. Then you might see a remarketing ad. Or at that stage, you might actually now be thinking, okay, I might be interested in this. Let me go and research other brands or products. Or maybe I'm going to go research this product and brand, look for reviews, see if this is a brand that I can trust. Start looking at other products similar to it. And then all of a sudden, you start seeing a remarketing ad, and it's now referring back to the main benefits, but also possibly even a study, a short case study of why the product is so beneficial.
Maybe the ingredients, studies on the ingredients.
Exactly. And now, as you are already in a stage where you're researching, you're looking around, you're looking for the products, you're looking for different products and similar products, then you start getting this content that's helping you better make an informed decision. Then you consume that content. You're like, okay, I see, they've got a study. It's got the data backed insights as to why this product in particular, given their ingredients, helps me truly become more effective in my, productivity in whatever activity I'm taking place in. And then you consume that type of content, but then for whatever reason, you still haven't purchased the product. Then you would see possibly another marketing material ad, maybe even on YouTube, wherever. And now what they're doing now is offering you a one-time off discount, valid for the next 72 hours. Why? Because they need to create something interesting. Seth Godin, the marketer that is well known, he said that one main reason why you also have these scarcities strategies is because unless you create tension for the consumer, they won't act. Meaning, if they don't know, oh, I've only got 20 minutes left, or oh, there's only 10 in stock left, they're not going to act in the moment that you want them to act. So that is why you might see a remarketing ad at the bottom of the funnel saying one-time offer, 72 hours, otherwise it's going to be full price again for you. And that is to force you to take that decision, make a decision, be decisive, and take that action. And that might be, hopefully, if it works, you should get a sale. Then once you become a customer, you're going to be now looking at that post-purchase experience. So some brands actually do also this really well. Say I bought the product, it's getting shipped over to me. It's getting shipped over to me in 24 hours because this one-time offer came with a 24-hour delivery time. And I get my product, and here I am opening it up. It's also about that experience. Maybe it's not just come in a box. Maybe it comes in a box with a handwritten letter, addressing your name, right? And that's the post experience, the experience that happens afterwards. And now you're also there sitting thinking, okay, wow, this is nice. A handwritten letter with my name on it. I don't know how many brands do that. So it's also trying to reinforce that they've just made a very good decision, that this purchase that they've gone through is something of an experience, right? And it's also to keep the buyer's remorse at bay, because if the experience is overwhelming, then that buyer's remorse doesn't really also kick in as much. But even if it does start to kick in, you know what they're going to do? They're going to start sending you emails. And they're going to start sending you emails about other happy customers and how they're using their product in school, athletics, studying, and so forth. And they will help you to better also maybe give you content to better understand how to best use the product and how many other people are using it, because what it's going to do is it's going to reinforce the fact that other people are using it. This is how they're using it. Wow, there's a lot of them. Okay, I must have made the right decision, right? I see a lot of A students, I see a lot of top athletes, and that is your email communication, that you can actually do that, and you can be sending emails post-purchase to ensure that you make sure that the buyer's remorse remains at bay, so that it doesn't come and overtake the consumer. And then at the end of the day, now it's a case of they've had this whole brand experience, they've purchased the product, They know that other people are happy with it. And now we need to ensure that the customer doesn't just buy this once off. We want to make sure that they repeat and come again and again and again. And now you might find yourself in a position where, let's say on average, I don't know, the product gets used up if as recommended, I don't know, you take 2 servings a day, it only lasts for, let's say, 14 days. What typically would happen in the back end is you set up a automated post-purchase campaign, and what that does, or customer replenishment campaign, and what that does is it sends out every 2 weeks to remind them, hey, you must have been low on stock, purchase now, and we'll ship your next delivery to you. And so that then becomes a post-purchase. You can even go on to as far as trying to get the customer or convince them enough to become subscribed to receiving these products on a bi-monthly or a monthly, and they can sign up to your subscription service. And what you'd want to do is, again, you want to make it worthwhile. You want to make them understand why they would sign up for subscription service. Of course, the convenience of not having to now go every time onto the website and go through the checkout process. It's literally automated. You'll get your product every 2 weeks or every month, and you'll save X amount if you subscribe today. And that is typically how the whole journey might look like.
Love it. Thank you so much for that, man. I think that was such a beautiful summary of, everything that we've discussed, applicable and contextual to, an e-commerce brand. It's awesome. Vix, yeah, man, I think same to you. Like, would you mind just, running us through what you would potentially do for a local business, walking them through the whole buying journey and up until the point where they become a repeat customer?
Yeah, similar to e-com. It's just executed a little bit differently. So let's, for example, take a local business, maybe like a salon or a cleaning company or whatever. We would have a top of funnel, which just pretty much means we would run maybe a video ad just showcasing how we perform our services to somebody, or how we do the services, and it could be a video of just how we do a treatment, or how we clean somebody's house, or whatever, depending on what company you are. And then we would retarget those people with a particular offer that would entice them to say yes to some kind of offer. And this is obviously going to be a really good deal, because we are trying to attract new customers. We just want to break even on this deal, essentially, because we want to focus on the lifetime value of this client in the future. So as soon as we have gotten their attention with that particular offer, obviously they then become a lead. They give us their name, email, and contact number. From there, there's 2 automations that fires. And usually how we get their name, number, and contact number is we would usually have something like a landing page or a lead form. And we would usually create some credibility with reviews before and after, stuff like that, just to show them that we are legit. That usually kind of decreases lead cost and really like gets people to act on it, because obviously that taps into the authority kind of bias. But as soon as they have applied or become a lead or shown interest in our particular offer, there's 2 automations that we usually put in place, and that these are email automations that automatically goes out to them. And one automation is introducing them to the company, maybe sending them additional reviews, additional before and afters and stuff like that, and just telling them a bit more about who we are as a business, what kind of work we do, and where we specialize in. And then the second one is creating urgency and scarcity behind the offer they have just submitted for, and reminding them, because everybody is so busy these days, like it's really essential to have an automation to remind people that they should actually take action on this offer, and kind of just to amplify this urgency and scarcity of this particular offer. Usually it would be like, hey, this offer is expiring in the next 72 hours, or this offer is only valid to you for the next week. After that, then you would have to pay double the price or whatever. And then we would also introduce physical contact, in terms of the business themselves contacting this particular person, and just kind of like introducing them and making sure that they received the offer, and kind of like also pushing them to come in for that particular treatment, or for them to take action on the offer. And from there, we go down to the sales and the decision-making process, where people actually make a buying decision as to, cool, they're going to commit to this, or they're not going to commit to this, or whatever. And then if they commit, obviously the sale is made. And from there, we always encourage our particular clients to to upsell them into other services that these customers might be interested in the form of maybe giving them like a 30% discount, or hey, if you bring a friend, you could get 50% off, or the both of you could get 30% off on this particular thing. And that's pretty much the entire buyer journey for a local kind of lead generation business.
I suppose if the service is good enough and there's exceptional customer support and all these things in place, then they are going to become a repeat client of that specific business, whether it's a beauty business or whether it's a cleaning business. I mean, cleaning business especially, like if you enjoyed the service and if it's convenient and if it's a really good in terms of affordability, in terms of price, and it's done well, then there's no reason to convert to someone else, right? And it's the same with the beauty side of it as well. So if you can really offer a good service at the end of the day, you're just going to increase your odds of bringing people back. And like we said, there's only really two ways to grow your business: finding new customers, bringing them back, and that's a solid approach. Same. Thanks so much for that. Really enjoyed unpacking the whole journey with you guys, and I hope there was value in you guys watching and listening. I think from my side, Gil, thanks so much for joining.
Thanks.
Vickers, thanks for your time as well. And I think this is basically the conclusion of today's episode. We will see you next week in another episode. Thanks again. All the best. Cheers.